Here's the thing about Majora's Mask. It's creepy as hell, and that's for more reasons than you might think. Yes, the game itself is all about death, undeath, abandonment, grief, etc. And yes, there is the infamous Ben Drowned creepypasta that adds an additional layer of unease whenever you pick up the controller to play, no matter how cheesy that story may seem in retrospect. Also, you have the weird circumstances in which the game was developed. The entire project took less than 1 year to complete, and many of the assets were recycled from Ocarina of Time. The game itself is almost an allegory for rising from the dead, a hobbled together Frankenstein of a game, built from the bones of something that came before. And of course, there are two major theories for the meaning of Majora's story. Either the game is to be taken at face value. Link literally falls down a hole in the woods and tumbles into an alternate world where he must now save everyone from impending doom, or Link is actually dead, and Termina is a purgatory of sorts, representing the stages of grief as he slowly accepts that his life is over. But the problem with both theories is, neither of them explain the final reason this game is so creepy: the complete absence of Princess Zelda. Naming the series after Zelda was always a little bit of a weird choice to me. Link is the hero of each story. Well, for the most part. Link is the character you play as, and we only ever see Zelda on screen for a comparatively tiny portion of each game. The naming choice makes more sense later in the series, once Zelda is explained to actually be the reincarnation of the goddess Hylia, and her role is much more apparent in modern games like Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild. But Majora's Mask is the standout, the strangest game in the series, because Zelda doesn't appear a single time. The closest we get is when Link retrieves the Ocarina of Time and remembers receiving it from Zelda before he ever entered Termina. And then, nothing. That is her entire impact on this game. Even the lettering of the title shows that Zelda is missing. Most Legend of Zelda games are stylized with the name Zelda in red, while the spin-offs have it in either green or blue. Breath of the Wild, which is sort of a reboot for the series, shows her name in gold. But Majora's Mask is the only game that has it in an eerie purple. Why? The only reason I can gather is because Zelda is absent from the story entirely. The problem is, this doesn't make sense in either of the two theories of the game's story. Let's look at the first. Termina is actually a different world, some sort of parallel universe or alternate reality version of Hyrule. In this understanding, it makes sense that so many of the characters you meet are so similar to those you met in Hyrule. Everyone here is just a doppelganger, the same person from an alternate timeline. Obviously, there are exceptions and variations. Instead of Malon living on Lon Lon Ranch with her father Talon, we see that Cremia and her younger sister Romani live on Romani Ranch, and their father is deceased. Under this literal interpretation of the story, Malon and Cremia are genetically the exact same person, but their lives are different due to the circumstances of the world around them. The resemblance is far closer with other characters. Virtually every resident of Clocktown has an exact copy who lives in Castletown, and in the instance of characters like the witches Kome and Kotake, their doppelgangers even have the exact same names. Termina is full of characters with a Hyrule equivalent, so why doesn't Zelda have one? We've seen other parallel worlds throughout the series. For example, the Kingdom of Lorule has a Zelda doppelganger in Princess Hilda. Shouldn't someone as important as Zelda have a doppelganger of some kind here? She's the incarnation of the goddess after all. Castletown resident number 326 gets a clone, and Zelda doesn't? Something's fishy here. Of course, then we have to consider the alternate theory. Termina isn't a real location, but instead it's a type of purgatory Link is experiencing after his death. Now, if I'm being honest, this makes far more sense to me than there being a portal to an alternate universe inside a random tree in the woods. And of course, it goes a long way to explain the doppelgangers. The reason Link sees Cremia and Romani instead of Malon is because he's known this girl at two distinct times in his life. If the world around him is really a manifestation of his psyche, then of course she's represented in both ways. It also explains why Termina is such a dark and depressing place. It's telling a narrative all about death. It's the type of story Link knows best, save the kingdom from evil. So here's our problem. If Link is actually dead, then there should definitely be some image of Zelda here in the world. How could someone so pivotal in his life not exist in his psyche as he works through the grief of dying? If Link really is dead, which I believe he is, why is Zelda nothing more than a passing thought when he gets his Ocarina? Well, here's my theory. The whole Link is dead idea is probably true, but that's only half of it. Is Termina just something Link's mind conjured up in his dying moments? A psychological mechanism designed to let him pass peacefully? Or is Termina more than that? I don't think Termina is a look into Link's psyche at the moment of his death. I think it is a literal purgatory, a place his soul goes after he has died. This isn't a world generated by his mind, but by the goddesses who created life and the afterlife. If we accept this interpretation, perhaps Majora's Mask isn't some evil being designed to cause chaos and destruction, but rather a being that is tasked with challenging the souls who die, allowing them to grow and evolve before they can pass on to heaven, or whatever the Zelda equivalent of heaven is. Link's purgatory, his soul's final challenge, is to accept that his life is over. He doesn't need to save anyone else anymore, he just needs to rest. Majora, of course, frames this as an adventure to save the world because that is what Link is used to. Even the beginning of the game fits this outline. Link was, quote, searching the woods for his friend Navi. I think that's an allegory. Navi passed away, and now Link is following her into that great beyond. But, okay, that still leaves one question. Where is Zelda? If Termina is a purgatory created by the goddesses, why don't we see any references to them in it? There aren't any Triforces, no royal family, no Hylia, no Zelda. These were all important to Link in one way or another. Are they not important things to consider during his stay in purgatory? Here's my explanation. The reason Zelda never appears in Termina is because she is literally Hylia. She is a physical manifestation of the highest of all deities. As we know from Breath of the Wild, even an image of Hylia, like her statues, allow you to convene with the goddess herself. Link can pray there and receive any real blessings that affect his health or stamina. An image of the goddess is, in and of itself, part of the goddess. And Zelda is Hylia. She is the goddess made mortal. This is why she never appears in Termina. She does not dwell in the land of the dead because she is an omnipotent being who cannot die. For even an image of Zelda to appear in Termina would be to kill a portion of Hylia, which cannot happen. She is the highest of the goddesses. The three goddesses of the Triforce, who created all of reality, they exist below Hylia in rank and power. Assuming they, or some lower deity, created this afterlife that Link finds himself in. Of course, they can't put a depiction of Zelda there. It would be blasphemous. A slight against their divine creator. The reason Zelda does not exist in Majora's Mask is because Majora's Mask is about death, and as the incarnation of the goddess Hylia, Zelda can never go down into that dark place. Or at least, that's my best guess. What do you think? Is there some other reason Zelda doesn't appear in this game? Is she just busy for those 3 days, and I've been talking out my ass this entire time? Let me know down in those comments. Be sure to like, subscribe, ring that bell, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I want to give a special thanks to all my patrons, especially Evilly Nice Nava. Stay frosty.